How do we end homelessness?
Social housing now.
How do we end homelessness?
Social housing now.
All right, thank you.
DJ is a Pivot lawyer, a lawyer with Pivot Legal Society, who has been engaged in the legal struggles around the homeless camp in Abbotsford, the Dignity Village homeless camp in Abbotsford, and also the homeless camp at Oppenheimer Park. And the reason she's not here tonight is that Oppenheimer Park injunction came through, and there were numerous police and city workers to help with the removal of the campers from that park.
Just to give you a quick update, I'm sitting at Oppenheimer Park right now. We've been here since about 7 a.m. There's still 4 campers packing up. So to give you a bit of an overview, the tent city's been here since the middle of July, and at one point grew to 250 tents. And we've been going through and working with and interviewing the people who've been living here. It's been a very significant population of people who have been experiencing homelessness and came here because they felt like it was a safe place for them to be. And the city had been advocating for housing people. And then 2.5 weeks ago, they went to court to seek an injunction on short notice to have the entire tent camp torn down. That kind of use of municipal bylaws is really concerning to us, because at that point the city was arguing that this was an incredibly unsafe space. They were characterizing everyone as simply protesters, and there was really no discussion of how we were going to transition people in a safe way, and no one was discussing this as a housing issue and taking a really hard look at what the municipality should be doing to protect people. The types of bylaws that Vancouver is using are similar in other cities, where parks are closed at night. There are laws against sleeping, resting, or erecting tents in parks. And what we see is that these bylaws get used to disperse people who are living on the streets. What's been unique in this circumstance is that people have really rallied at the last minute and worked to get people into shelters. But honestly, we have major concern that these types of bylaws are not constitutional, and they're not an appropriate way for municipalities to be dealing with issues of homelessness. There's a current action in Abbotsford, which is challenging the bylaws in Abbotsford, which are similar to those in Vancouver, because really they're a municipal mechanism to displace people, and in our experience, that makes people's lives more dangerous. The other issue that's coming up through the Oppenheimer Park experience is the maintenance in the single resident occupancy hotels. That's the major source of low-income housing in Vancouver. And Vancouver is one city that does have standards and maintenance bylaws. Some cities don't have them at all, and until recently, Vancouver hasn't been enforcing them. The result has been that most low-income housing in the city has been falling into really desperate disrepair, and bad landlords have not been held accountable. Like I said, only recently has the city really taken an active role in actually enforcing that maintenance bylaw and trying to make the SROs a safe place for people to be. And that's an extremely important tool for cities to be using, because we could be waiting a long time for this province to provide enough social housing, and we could be waiting a really long time to sort of fix the system of housing that people are having trouble navigating their way through. So standards and maintenance bylaws are an incredibly important tool for municipalities to use, and most of them are not using them effectively to protect people in the moment. And the final sort of aspect that's coming up through this process is the idea that emergency shelters are the ideal way for people to get into the housing system. what we're seeing here, and what's become really clear, is that it's the people who are most vulnerable, who are dealing with mental illness issues, addictions, and other disabilities and trauma, who don't have access to the shelter system. Sleeping in shelters is impossible for some people. It's dangerous for them. They have difficulty with the rules. And for couples, it can be really challenging to ask them to go to a shelter, especially if you're asking them to separate themselves from the partner and keep them safe. So what we're learning here is that the people who are left are those who are most vulnerable. They're the ones who really can't access the shelter system. And we need to come up with municipal systems that meet people where they're at and don't require them to go into shelters in order to access housing. Because if we're relying on emergency shelters, we're necessarily leaving out the people who are most vulnerable and who need really dedicated and patient outreach the most. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, but otherwise that's kind of my overview of what's happening here today.
Which bylaws are they using?
For removal?
Yeah, for removal.
So one of the questions was, which bylaws are they using for removing people from the park?
The City of Vancouver is using the park bylaw, which prohibits people from being in a park between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and also prohibits people from erecting tents in parks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
How many people, if any, have been arrested at Oppenheimer so far?
So how many people, if any, have been arrested at Oppenheimer so far?
My understanding is that 5 people have been arrested today, and those are people who indicated that they did not want to take down their tents, and they decided to stand in protest, and they were taken into custody around 4:30 this afternoon.
My question is, so the people that have left Oppenheimer, are they, do they get adequate housing, or what's their situation? Are they just on the streets again, or?
Did you hear that?
No, sorry, could you repeat?
Yeah. The people who have left Oppenheimer, did they get adequate housing, or are they still on the streets, or what's happening with them?
Most people have gone to emergency shelters. I understand, I don't know this firsthand, I understand that the city is trying to place people in SROs from the emergency shelters, but right now a lot of people are in emergency shelters, which means, mats on the floor for the most part. There's some beds, but mostly it's mats on the floor in large common area rooms. Some people have left to the streets, and I have talked to people who've just, packed up what they can carry and left and gone to other outdoor locations because the shelters are just not an option for them.
How long do they have to stay in emergency shelters before they get reasonable housing?
So how long will they have to stay in shelters before they can access reasonable housing?
That's an incredibly difficult question. What we've been seeing over the course of years is that going into shelters is no guarantee that you will get decent housing. It's a way to get people off the street, which makes people less visible, and for some people is a temporary place to stay, but there's no guarantee that people are going to get housing, and that's extremely troubling. We need to improve the municipal systems that connect people between shelter and housing, and really advocate quite strongly with the province to also create more affordable and social housing. It's a massive problem, and what we're seeing here really proves that shelters aren't the answer to homelessness. They move it out of the way and they make it less visible, but it's not a permanent option, and it has become a system that people cycle through for months and sometimes years and don't actually get access to housing.
Whatever happens.
Hang on, there's one question behind you.
My question was there any fatalities at the duration of the Oppenheimer incident?
So the question was there any fatalities during the duration of the Oppenheimer tent city?
My understanding is that there was one fatality. There was an older gentleman who passed away yesterday. It is my understanding that he died of a heart attack. It was not directly related to the circumstances in the camp, but, just more evidence that people here are living in really precarious circumstances, and the longer you live outside or in substandard housing, the more your health is at risk.
How many people exactly are left in Oppenheimer right now? Like four?
I think she said. So the question was, how many are left right now at Oppenheimer?
4 people, 4 campers.
For-
There's a lot of police and a lot of city staff here and 4 campers left. There's a few people on the periphery, but
Are they gonna arrest them, or they're just letting them sit there? Like, why did you ever just get arrested and they didn't?
So the 4 that are there are packing up and leaving on their own accord, is that true?
the 4 people are being assisted in packing up, and the idea is to hopefully connect them with somewhere safe to go tonight.
So a couple more questions and then we'll stop. Okay.
Were any service providers there to potentially help these people find housing?
So were any service providers on site to help people find housing?
The Carnegie Outreach was, they did have a tent here today, and so they have been connecting people to the shelter mats that are available in the overflow shelters that the city has put up. And the other thing that they have been helping with is packing people's things for storage so that their belongings that they can't take with them right now will be stored by the city and they can hopefully access them later.
One more question.
It's possible to know when was the last time that the person that passed away see a doctor?
So the question was, the person that passed away, when was the last time that he saw a doctor?
You know what? I don't have the answer to that. I wish I knew, but all I can say is that when people are experiencing, housing marginalization, their access to health care is seriously impeded. So safe and secure housing really is a gateway to many, many other things, including medical treatment.
Okay, one more. Scott.
I was interested when DJ mentioned that the city of Vancouver is starting to finally enforce their standard maintenance bylaw. I was wondered if she had an opinion on why that is that they finally started to.
So you had mentioned that the City of Vancouver is starting to enforce the standards of maintenance bylaw, and the question is, why do you think that is starting to happen now?
There's been advocacy going on for many years from an incredible number of residents of the downtown east side and advocates in the downtown east side, as well as litigation from legal advocates in my office against bad landlords who leave their tenants in outrageously unacceptable conditions that are unsafe and unsanitary. We've had some success in litigating against those landlords and advocating with the city that they need to take a proactive approach. The city has acknowledged that that's necessary and is starting to really push those landlords through various means to improve the maintenance in their buildings. It's been a significant change, and I think it's directly due to the advocacy that the tenants and the residents of this neighborhood have been doing over the course of many years.
Great. All right, thanks so much, DJ.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Well, that's great. It's great to hear the voice from the front lines, as it were. And I was there this morning at 7:30 at the park, and DJ was there, so she's been there all day, observing what's going on and trying to advocate for people.